Welcome to ReThink You, bringing you ideas, inspiration, and motivation to start living the life you were created to live. Here is your host, author, trainer, speaker, and coach, and founder of ReThink You, Kim Levings.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to the ReThink You podcast. I'm Kim Levings, and I'm welcoming you to episode 108. We're making great progress, and I hope you've been enjoying the stories that we've been listening to. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Fernando Flores. He is the founder of the Health and Wellness University, and he's a certified high-performance coach. But Fernando is also an attorney, an author, and a well-known speaker. He speaks specifically on the topic of occupational burnout and emotional intelligence, which I'm sure is going to be of great interest to people in the audience. Fernando has spoken on these topics both in America and internationally in Mexico and India. And Fernando is passionate about helping other people reach optimum levels of health and wellness. So he has an interesting story. And prior to being a high performance coach, he was actually an appellate attorney. So if you want to know more of his full story, feel free to, go read it at the website. But Fernando, so from attorney to running a health and wellness university, there's a story there. So why don't you tell us, how did you get started in life? Because, so many times people pursue their life purpose and trying to do things that they think other people want them to do, and they ignore their own sense of purpose and vision. So let me stop talking and let's hear from you, Fernando. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate you having me on ReThink You. And that's a powerful first question to start with. And so it's a, it's a great point. And for me, my journey really focused on starting out my career as an attorney, right? As you mentioned. And what happened, Kim, to be perfectly honest with you, was my personal identity, the human me, became very attached to that professional identity, right? That I had developed for myself. And so when these two identities meshed with each other, what happened was one had to, take the lead, right? In order to move forward, either, professionally or personally, right? Especially having gone through a lot of schooling. It's interesting, right? I went through a lot of schooling, but I didn't really learn too much about balancing, right, yourself and your being with balancing your professional trajectory. And so for me, what ended up happening is I entered the legal profession, which is a very demanding profession. It's very high stress, fast paced, very quick turnarounds, and highly demanding. And what I ended up falling into, right, was not exercising consistently, not eating healthy, drinking, not sleeping well, and not knowing how to manage stress effectively. And that practically was my first 7 years of those 11 years that you mentioned of being a trial and appellate attorney. And I had to turn it around, Kim. I had to figure something out, to turn it around. And unfortunately, in 2015 and 2016, I had back-to-back deaths in my family that really woke me up to what is it that I am doing to fully nurture the human me. My professional identity had been advanced, but the human me fell really far back behind. And I just had to go back to the drawing board and rethink, right? How is it that I need to nurture me? And that is eventually what led me down the path of establishing Health and Wellness University and helping others reach optimal levels of health and wellness for them, because I was my own first client and I wanted to see if I could do it. And I did, right? And I can talk about everything that I did, but I want to start there.
Right. No, that is such a good leading, because our stories are similar. As my listeners know, they've listened to my video, and that it's a common problem amongst people where we attach our identity and sense of self-worth, as you said, to those professional titles and the professional roles. So many people who come into programs like you and I offer are often coming in from that perspective, and they wear, burnout and that sort of extremely busy and overloaded life as a badge of honor. And in fact, it's extremely damaging. So thank you for drawing attention to that. And also what you said about death, sometimes having a major wake-up call. And I think COVID has actually been a major wake-up call this year for many people to say, what is it that I'm actually doing? Before we end this life, as Les Brown says, sometimes people die at 25, but we don't bury them until they're 65. Yeah. And, what are you giving up on? What are you doing in your life? So, Fernando, tell us some of, besides the death, which was obviously a huge pivot point, what other setbacks have you experienced in life that you think sort of got you more firmly on this track? And why health and wellness? I think that there's a story behind that.
Yeah, I mean, there could have been a lot of routes that I could have taken, right? But I really wanted to focus on my blind spot. And let me talk a little bit about that, because that leads into why it is that I've gone around the globe really to talk about occupational burnout and emotional intelligence, right? So I wanna introduce that theme too, because that's really important. And so for me, what I realized was I wasn't very effective, in terms of managing my stress. And so when I had a really big project coming on, or a trial that I had to present in front of, a judge or jury, it was really challenging to sit through those difficult, challenging emotions. And a lot of times we're going to work through those emotions one way or the other, whether you realize it or not. You're going to work through them. For some folks, it's a lot of ruminating, a lot of being what's called, just caught in your own mind. Some folks will resort to watching a lot of shows. Some folks will resort to drinking. Some folks will resort to different things, right? And so it's all about looking closely at what are those habits that come up when you are under pressure, and then making the time to reduce those that are not good for your health and enhancing those that are. So I went back to the basics. I started paying close attention. Wait, I'm not exercising consistently. There's months where I don't do any physical activity. And there's times where I'll go and I'll do some physical activity, but then I'll stop because I get busy. So what I decided to do was prioritize myself. And it was the first time in 2015, 2016, when I fully committed myself to myself, right? Instead of committing myself to just my career, I committed myself to myself for the first time. And I started to go into the gym 2 times a week, right? I'm not this extraordinary person, but I am someone who made the decision to commit myself more fully so that I can live a healthier, more fulfilled life. And so that instead of leading with that professional identity, I can lead with my health and well-being. And then what started happening was I started exercising. I started looking at okay, happy hour is not necessarily my thing anymore, because after several months, I started going to the gym 3 times a week. After several years, I started going to the gym 4 times a week. Consistency was essential in this piece, right? And a lot of what I started seeing was, hey, drinking water in the mornings, small thing that we sometimes disregard. 85% of people will look at their phones within 15 minutes of waking up. Well, I would go the other direction. I won't look at it until 30, 45 minutes of meditating in the morning. Then I can look at my phone, right? I want to be doing those things that not just, feed myself physically, but also emotionally and spiritually. And so I started looking at the dimensions that I had disregarded for a long time. And I realized in talking to other, professionals, not just in the legal profession, right? In an extensive number of professions, and, just in general, people, right? We don't pay close attention to this holistic sphere of well-being areas, right? And so that's kind of why I decided to go.
That's how you got started. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there. I just wanted to draw attention, and I think my listeners know this. I draw attention to some important key points that I've written down, because sometimes we listen to something and it goes in one ear and out the other, or we think, gee, that's good, and then forget it. So I just want to emphasize And you are saying a lot of the same things that I say, and they are so important. So I love hearing your story. But when you said, I committed myself to myself, is so important. It's that principle of put on your own oxygen mask. You can't serve others and you can't fully step into your purpose if you're not taking care of yourself, because then your tank is empty. So that, but also make a decision. Again, so many people, they know what they need to do and they just don't do it. They choose not to do it. Choosing not to do it is a choice. So you made the right choice, and that consistency, and I like to say success breeds success. So if you start your day off right, which you and I both do, in that we've got this whole morning routine, and I agree with you about drinking water, because that first chug of water in the morning kickstarts the brain cells and gets the body ready for the day. So simple little things, but it really all rests with making the choice and making the decision. So thank you for pointing out those really important things. So let me have you carry on telling us the rest of your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are excellent points to emphasize, points that take time. And I'm definitely, I want to be clear. I'm not here in any way, shape, or form preaching perfection. I'm far from perfect. I want you to know that. I do, I am mindful that sometimes in the professional development, personal development sphere, sometimes there's no room for stumbling. And no, like I'm the opposite. I like stumble as much as possible, so that you can learn as quickly as possible what worked for you and what doesn't work for you. Because for me, I realized, like, jumping from no exercise to 5 days a week, I tried it. It doesn't work. So I committed to something where I met myself where I was. And that was
Right.
2 days a week for several months, 6, 7, 8 months. Then I added another day. So small, smart, steady steps consistently is ultimately what will allow you to shift from one habit to the other. Now, habits are one thing, right? I like to say, as a high performance coach, I do a lot of, I'm a habit negotiator, right? And I'm like, okay, that's the habit that you have
Like that.
now. Can we negotiate another habit that could potentially, be included into your routine, right? But with respect to another important piece, the emotional well-being piece, right? In law school and undergrad, we really don't get taught about emotions, in managing emotions, in this emotional undercurrent. So your listeners are tuning in right now. They're experiencing emotions, whether, again, it's at the forefront of their minds and hearts. They're feeling something. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's interest. Maybe it's, I'm listening to, Fernando, I'm bored right now. They're feeling some emotion, and we are constantly exchanging emotions through, again, this emotional undercurrent. If we are not aware of our own emotions, we're really missing a very big piece of ourselves. That when we gain self-awareness of our emotions through our day, right, it takes time, but eventually that self-awareness is going to allow us to say, wait, is this, an emotional state that I want to be experiencing right now? You start getting a little bit more control over, just where you want to be emotionally, and then
Right.
things won't pull you in as much. You'll work on eventually staying with your centered, serene, tranquil self, regardless of how much chaos there may be around you. That is the difficult part. They call emotional intelligence a soft skill, but the reality is emotional intelligence is by far the most difficult skill if you choose to develop it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is. It's like I say, if you don't take charge of your mind, if your mind's left to its own devices, it will default to the negative self-doubt, anxiety, procrastination, all of the above will kick in, because that's our default operating system. It takes hard work to actually take charge of your mind. And you're so right. It's those constant tapes of emotions. So, but tell us a little about the things that you think are your core values and how you've aligned your life to those values more strongly in the last few years.
I love that. I actually have my values, posted in front of me. Like, my personal values
Great.
are to lead with love, um, to further deepen, heal, and expand my connection with my spirit, and to exemplify self-acceptance of and self-compassion toward my perfectly imperfect self. So those are my values that I live with. I recognize again that I am a work in progress, but I'm a beautiful work in progress, and I accept myself where I am right now. And that's another important piece, self-acceptance. A lot of
Right.
times, you know, we look at ourselves externally and internally sometimes, and you know, we don't direct self-acceptance toward ourselves, and that goes hand in hand with self-love. Sometimes we can show ourselves love, like, oh, I'm gonna show myself some love by, you know, having a day at the spa. You know, not right now, but maybe that's what it was before, and in the future we will get back to that. And so you have like this beautiful day, you show yourself, you nurture yourself, you show yourself love.
Right.
But how much self-acceptance is there behind that as well? And it goes hand in hand. You got to have both self-love and self-acceptance. And for me, that's been a beautiful journey, you know, one that has allowed me to approach that most authentic version of myself and be able to share it with others, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
No, that's absolutely fabulous, because I think self-acceptance is at the root of it. Certainly, that's what I've run into also as a performance coach and helping people rethink themselves. I also know that sometimes, Fernando, the best path towards success is to get better at what we already know. And I also say to folks that, you know, whatever career, like in your case, your career as an attorney, whatever you've done before that we see as a life distraction or it's not exactly our purpose, we learn a lot during those years. So what did you find were some of your learnings from your legal career that you were able to leverage to become strengths in what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think, you know, anyone who's thinking of making a professional transition, you know, this is an important exercise, right? Um, I think one of the main things that as an attorney I had to do, I had to understand the story of what happened in a particular case, in a particular circumstance that led to a lawsuit, that led to a litigation, right? And so understanding the story of my clients in the legal context, right, transferred very well into understanding the story of my clients in the high performance coaching world and the health and wellness world, right? And being able to listen. And all I did, however, when I went into the high performance coaching world was to listen with even more care, to listen more deeply, to listen with a greater level of curiosity and interest and love and passion, because the more you learn about, you know, where someone is, the better you're able to serve them, and the better you're able to serve them by helping them serve themselves, right? I'm not working on changing anyone. I know how hard it is to change me. So changing someone else, that's not what I try to do, because I know that's going to be incredibly hard. I help people, I guide people to, hey, what are the changes that you want to make and that you are prepared to make, not just mentally, but with your heart. Because when you align both your mind and your heart and you target a goal, you will be unstoppable. You will fall, but you will get back up, and you will eventually be able to succeed. But you have to make sure, and that's one of the things that I also learned, that it's powerful to align your heart and your mind, right? And that's actually something that it's the opposite of what you asked me. It wasn't something that I was doing. I was leading a lot with my mind as an attorney, but here
Right.
I aligned both heart and mind and pursued, you know, goals in that way.
That's wonderful. I like that you learned by omission rather than, you know, commission. So it was something that you weren't doing that occurred to you that you learned from. But so, you know, Fernando, to change directions a little, tell us what you're doing with the Health and Wellness Clinic, and, you know, how did that come about, and where did the personal passion for wellness come from?
Yeah. Health and Wellness University, it really came about from an effort to try to provide information to others, right? It's very straightforward in the name. It's It's a resource for individuals who really want to take their own health and wellness to the next level. And we don't shy away from talking about, any and all areas of health and wellness. And we were having annual conferences, and we've just grown. And we started with like 6 speakers in each conference 3 years ago. And next year, in 2021, we're going to 24 speakers in 1 year. So we're having 2 conferences now, because a lot of folks who have great expertise are joining our conferences. And I can talk about that in a little bit. The next one's in January of 2021. And people come and talk and share their expertise around everything from, again, self-acceptance, self-love, anxiety, stress management, occupational burnout, emotional intelligence, journey with just all sorts of themes that are so powerful and so needed. I think for me, I was doing this work before COVID, came in, but I found it just incredibly important in being able to weather the storm, all that work that I had been doing before, and just being able to connect with my clients as well, and work through the challenges that they were facing. We just applied a lot of the principles that we've been talking about, in the podcast. And it really leaned into those principles, not just talk about them and, oh no, that sounds great, right? Like, no, really, what are you doing through your actions, right? So that you exemplify what we're talking about, and exemplify the things that you've committed to. So, yeah.
That's excellent. I'm excited about that. 24 speakers, you'd have to split it to 2 conferences. But before we go there anyway, you've told us some great parts about who you are. And I always like to ask people who I interview on ReThink You, if you had to give 1, 2, or at most 3 life lessons and takeaways that you'd love the listeners to know from your book of tricks, what are things that they could immediately apply in their lives? And as I said, 1, 2, or 3 life lessons that you would offer the audience.
Definitely.
I threw you some tough ones, so choose from your favorites, right?
Yeah, no, I really want to share, the more powerful ones. And I, for many years, I lived with a closed heart, and what I mean by that, like, imagine your fist is closed, right? And growing up, I really wasn't taught, like, as a young man, hey, when you feel sadness, when you feel, anger, when you feel down, this is how you can work through your own emotions. It was the opposite. It was like, hey, don't cry. Hey, don't show anger, And so what happened was that causes you to clam up, to close your heart, to not really know the wonderful range of emotions that we can feel, especially, right, as a man. I had to learn how to unlearn that, right? So that you coming into my own personal relationships, into my marriage, right, into the relationships with my family members, I can share all of me, right? I can share the joys, I can share the downs, I can share the excitement, I can share the not so excitement, and really be able to be authentic with that. Because a lot of times, we think that personal development is about, I say, hey, reaching, what I'm doing is helping others reach the greatest levels of fulfillment in their lives, right? Through the health and wellness work. And sometimes people misconstrue that as never feeling a difficult emotion again. And that's not the case. The case is really learning to experience all the emotions. I've experienced a ton of great emotions this year, but a ton of very difficult emotions as well. But I have sat with them, right? And I've been able to, over the years, right, commit to exercise, but also stop drinking, enter into a vegan diet, and do all these things for me, nobody else, just for me, that have taken me to the next level, right? And so I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't learn to develop my own self-awareness of my emotions to eventually open my heart. So learn to live with an open heart, unclench your fist, open your hand, and receive it all. And it's not easy sometimes, but it also doesn't have to be insurmountably hard. It's what you tell yourself it is, right? So I think that's one of the main takeaways.
That's powerful. And I was going to say, that'll be hard to beat. I mean, you're welcome to add another one, but I think many people, that's a great takeaway of opening your hand to receive. And what I say to folks is developing emotional expressivity is different to just being emotional. Just being reactive and losing your temper. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about giving validity to feelings that perhaps were invalidated in your early years. Our parents did the best they could, but you're right. Many grew up in a household where emotions or expressivity is not tolerated, especially for boys and men. I know that I have a colleague that works in the police force, and they run into the same thing where that part of that person is just shut down, and they just don't express emotions. But I digress. Anything else that you'd like to share that you wished I'd asked you that I haven't shared, because I want to sort of move towards what are you doing next year and how do people connect with you. But before we get to that, I want to give you an open opportunity to say anything else you want to say, Fernando, because I think you have a lot more that you could offer the audience.
Well, I really want your audience to remember that just because there's aspects of yourself that, as you beautifully mentioned, have been shut down for a long time, does not mean you cannot reawaken them, right? Mm-hmm. And it all starts if that emotional aspect of you, that emotional dimension of your well-being has been shut down, you can reawaken it and be gentle with yourself, be compassionate in your journey. It's going to be 2 steps forward, maybe 1 step back, maybe 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and then you got to start again. That's okay, right? Be gentle with yourself and think about how you can develop some self-awareness, right? And how often are you able to express your emotions in a clear way? How often are you able to respond, to certain emotions that you are feeling, or maybe someone's directing, versus, like you said, reacting, right? I think there's a difference between responding and reacting. And emotional intelligence is something that you can learn and you can grow in, right? Like, it can grow over time, and that's beautiful, because if you choose to go on that journey, the rewards are they're incredible, and so I do want to encourage folks to focus on developing that self-awareness. For me, one of the initial resources was Daniel Goldberg's Emotional Intelligence. Very straightforward book, but a powerful book. I go back to it periodically because I pick up on, as I continue to grow and develop, I pick on different aspects of that resource. And I highly recommend it for folks if they're interested in starting in that journey. And then also, connect with us in Health and Wellness University. We're bringing, top of the line information with respect to these issues.
That's wonderful, Fernando. How do people reach you? And I'll put this in the show notes. That's why I've been writing notes, folks. So I'll make sure that when we post the episode, I include the link to Daniel's book and anything else that you share. But how do people find you?
Yeah, definitely. So the best way is just go to our website, healthandwellness.university. So just so the folks know, there's no .com. It's just healthandwellness.university. And
it's spelled AND. It's not the and sign. It's health and AND. Wellness, yes. Health and wellness.
Correct. University. Health and wellness .university.
.university. Great.
Yeah, that's where folks can find out about what events we have and what events we've had in the past.
Super.
They want to listen to the past events that we've had in the past years and learn from those speakers and, immerse yourself in that knowledge. It's all there. It's all available to you. So, yeah.
That's fabulous. And are you doing virtual events? Because I gather people are not yet back in live events.
Yeah.
So you said you have your conference coming up in January. Is that information on your website, Fernando?
It is.
Okay.
And, you can go to the website, find the information there. You can also go to, it's ohw2021.eventbrite.com. So OHW is for online health, uh,
Health and wellness, right?
Online Health and Wellness University. Yeah. 2021.eventbrite.com. And you'll have all the information of the speakers. And it's set for January 30th. It's a Saturday.
Okay.
From 8:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And it's a global conference. We have speakers from Europe, Canada, here in the
That's
US.
fabulous.
And so it's like a powerful 6 hours of excellent content
Yes.
related to your own health and wellness.
That's fabulous. So you said 8 to 1:30 p.m. Which time zone is that?
Pacific Standard Time.
Pacific. So, okay. I want to just make sure we get all the right information attached to this episode. So thank you for that. And yeah, I'm sure that you would agree with me, Fernando, as we sort of come to the close here. What you just said is powerful, that I've noticed as a speaker and trainer myself, how much more content is prolifically available now that we're in a virtual world, because the ability to bring 24 speakers together for 6 hours is so much more available and easy to do now than it was when we did things in person. I mean, I love in-person events. I'm sure you do too, but I think that people have access to so much more, which has been one of the incredible positive outcomes of COVID this year that I like to draw attention to. So people don't get spun out about all the negative impacts of COVID. There's a lot of really good stuff happening because of COVID. So thank you for that, Fernando. Anything else you'd like to say as we close?
And I'll just share, like every time that we have our speakers, we really try to focus on ensuring that they're gonna share from the heart. So if you just want to surround yourself with that energy too of other folks who maybe have faced a difficult challenge. One of our speakers is going to come and speak very honestly about her journey living with anxiety and how she's had to work on really, again, committing to herself to overcome that, right? Other folks are going to speak about, how, not just spirituality, but how to really deepen it within yourself. It's really, really empowering and a positive environment that I think is good for anyone to be around. And I will clarify, so in the next year, we're having 2 conferences now, 12 speakers each. So total in the year, we have 24 speakers, but in the one in January, we have 12.
And the one in January is 12.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. No, thank you so much. And in the middle of all of that, thank you for making time to be with us today, Fernando. I've really enjoyed meeting you, and I hope that Health and Wellness University will continue kind of collaborate with ReThink You, and because we're all on the path of creating a healthier and better world. So thanks again for being available to do this today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.